Should passive euthanasia be allowed? Should a patient have a right to die? Anand Grover, senior advocate, welcome. Sanjeev Bagai, Vice Chairman and Director of the Dwarka Manipal Hospital, welcome. Dr. Abraham Mathai of the Indian Christian Voice, Sunil Bhattacharjee, Secretary of the Society for the Right to Die with Dignity in India, welcome. My first question is to Harish Salve. Let's open the debate. Mr. Salve, if a patient has previously expressed a wish not to have life-sustaining treatments in case he or she is in a vegetative state or a state of suffering that will ultimately lead to the death of the patient, in your view, should his or her wishes be respected when the situation arises? Should people have that right?
Arnab, what you're asking is an extremely complex question. The one thing which we are clear is the religious overtones of this issue have to be taken out. So if people say God doesn't give you a right to end your life, that is an argument which has to be taken out in a constitutional society. If a patient has expressed a wish, do not resuscitate in certain events. I think there is a strong argument to say that the right to live with dignity by necessary implication means that if there is no dignity in what is going to continue, a vegetative existence is not a right to live with dignity. It is quite another matter as to what kind of machinery you need to put in place that this just doesn't become an excuse for relatives to bump off inconvenient ill patients. So I think when we focus on this debate, you must focus on the core issue, assuming it is possible to isolate the machinery and the abuse problem. Let's talk of the use. And when you talk of the use, once our constitution recognizes that there is a right to live with dignity, I think we do raise the question that where no existence with human dignity is possible, does a person not have a right to say, if I do not have that basic dignity, please do not force me to live.
So two arguments.
That's one issue.
No, 2
the
points.
Second is assisted suicide.
No,
maybe I'm a liberal on this issue. I feel that if a person wills, when he's in a capacity to will,
right,
that I cannot take the pain anymore,
right,
I would like my pain to end, I think that right has to be given to an individual. How you will protect it from abuse should not be confused with a fundamental right to say or not to say so.
Okay.
So I think what you would be doing an enormous job is in focusing is on the right of the individual. Unfortunately, what happens is two overlays come. Oh, but this will be abused. People will kill people. We'll deal with that separately. How do you isolate? How do you create a machinery with checks and safeguards?
Okay.
The second overlay, the silent overlay, is the religious overlay. That God does not permit you to do this. Well, leave that to the individual. If I'm a Christian, or if I'm a Hindu, or if I belong to a faith where I believe God doesn't permit me to end my life, I will not will it. But if I do not follow my own religious tenet, I don't think anybody else has the right
Harish
to
Salve,
overlay it on me.
I'm not arguing on either side, don't get me wrong. But I want to get Dr. Abraham Mathai of the Indian Christian Voice, because you're raising that religious point out there. You know, the argument is that it is God's will to give life, it is God's will to take life. And there are miracles, they say. You know, they give you an example, for example, of a person who went into a crash in 1984. After 24 years, he regained consciousness. So this is a miracle of God. Someone like Abraham Mathai will say, and there is a moral distinction between the moral equivalence of killing and letting someone die. Abraham Mathai, Harish Salve says, don't bring your religion into it. Your response. And by the way, it's an open debate. We can come into the debate as we wish. Abraham Mathai.
Yes, Arnab, I believe that God has created man, and only God who created man has the right to take away life. So circumstances and difficult circumstances of an individual does not give him the right to take away his life. And I'll tell you, assuming that this legislation comes, we are actually opening a Pandora's box.
Why?
Because you'll find so many you will have so many kind of advocacy groups, like people who are lame, people of physically challenged, mentally challenged, and they will approach, say that we don't want to live like this, so we should be allowed to die. So there's no end to it. Therefore, this has to be challenged and this should not be legalized.
No, what if the person is lying in a vegetative state for a long duration with no chance of recovery? Okay, Harish Salve is coming in. Yes, go ahead. It's an open debate. Anyone can come in at this point. Harish Salve. Harish Salve.
Let's not confuse the abuse with the use. The fundamental issue is God commands me not to steal, I steal.
Arnav, what I'm saying,
God commands me not to.
Vegetative state, he or she is not in a position to speak. So how are we to take a decision on that person's behalf?
No, if that person is not on what? No, one second. The question is of suffering. The question is of suffering. So I can also turn that back, Dr. Mathai, and ask you, on what grounds is anyone justified to forcibly keep the patient alive when he or she has been suffering? The fact of the matter is that it has more to do with the individual's pain and suffering. I can say it's not morally right to see anyone suffer. I don't think God would want to see anyone suffer. You force the person to live despite the pain. That's not ethically right either. Sunil Bhattacharjee, I want Sunil Bhattacharjee, Harish Salve, 1 minute. I want everyone into the debate and then we'll open it up. Sunil Bhattacharjee. Can I come in? Sure, you can come in, Anand Grover, but just let Sunil Bhattacharjee make his point.
In fact, I'm just, I have heard so long. I can tell you simply one thing, that the beautiful word was dignity. Dignity is the one thing which counted for any person, especially elderly person. I can give you 2 instances of my own life which I have experienced. Number one is, when this movement came in Calcutta, why I joined, I have seen my father suffering from 13 years in dementia. And these 13 years, practically, whatever the respect he earned and all these things, all he practically lost. So this is one thing which definitely attracted me. And at the same time, we are propagating for it. But after some time, I have experienced another thing in my family. My daughter-in-law was in coma for 16 days. And in fact, the doctors are about to take out all the life support. Only looking at me and my son, they kept it for 1 day. And my daughter-in-law is fine now, today. But even then, if I am asked that with these 2 experiences, whether I support the law or not, I will say I support the law. Because as you have said, in vegetative state, the position or the people or the suffering, all these things, that should be definitely helped. Only thing is, the precaution has to be taken so that it is not misused.
The question
Another one point I will definitely tell you, the question, when the question of misuse of law comes. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Hello. When the question of misuse comes, then the question of in which law it has not been misused. There is another part of it. So by having the law for this, the apprehension of misuse should not come in the way.
No. The misuse argument will very strongly come. Anand Grover, let me come to you just for presenting a contrary view, and Sanjeev Bagai, I'm coming to you after that. You see, India is a poor country. There are a lot of people who cannot afford treatment. They will look to exploit the law. When you permit passive euthanasia, it leaves the room for gross abuse, where people who cannot afford the treatment will say, let the person die. They will make this an excuse. Anand Grover, that's a very real possibility in India, isn't it?
It is indeed. But let me answer the points in the manner I want. I think first of all, religion cannot play a very important role in our decision making, because different religions in our country have different points of view. There are religions who actually agree with actually taking life. So which religion do you actually go to? So I don't think that can play a part. Constitutionally, as Harish has said, that actually our Supreme Court has said in the judgment of Gyan Kaur that the right to live with dignity carries with it the right to die with dignity. The third thing that you address is about misuse. I think that's a real problem. So you have to have certain very strong safeguards, and that's why the Supreme Court judgment in Gyankor, which is then, in my opinion, detailed out in Aruna Shanbag, is now come up for reconsideration. There they have detailed procedures. So if there is no problem, in my opinion, if the person who is actually in a vegetative state has given advance instructions. Take an example, if I say by a statement, declaration or a will that if I'm in a vegetative state for 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, I don't want any life support systems, there's no problem with that. But the problem comes when I'm not given an advance instructions, then other people have to decide. So you have to have
How can they decide? No. How can they decide? And
yes,
to that, the humanity. To that, Anand Grover, the humanity argument will be put up by people like Sanjeev Bagai. He wants to come in.
Absolutely.
And my question will be,
let me answer that quickly. Absolutely. Let me answer that before he comes in, because I think it's very important that we have safeguards, because misuse is very
safeguards don't happen on the ground. Do you see how humane is it?
No, I agree.
No, how humane is it tomorrow? Tomorrow, suppose selfish relatives decide that we will not give food, we will not give water.
Not the relatives. Let me answer that.
No, one second.
So the Supreme Court did lay down certain guidelines, which is first the thing has to come from a particular set of people.
So what if that particular set of people?
But it has also to involve doctors, and it has to go to the High Court. So there are 3 layers. It can't be only one person who can decide. And that goes through a procedure.
I'm only arguing from the other side that how is it humane to deny someone food, water and medicine that will eventually lead to their death?
I agree.
And what happens? What happens also? Sanjeev Bagai is coming into the debate.
You can only put a process in
place. One second. Anand Grover. What happens in a case where a person is in excruciating pain with multiple ailments but is not terminally ill? Then do the arguments of compassion and reducing agony face a severe test? Sanjeev Bagai.
No.
Sanjeev Bagai is coming in.
Let
Dr. Bagai come
in. All these elements in a procedure.
Dr. Bagai.
Or no, I'll begin with facts first.
You see,
euthanasia, if you see by definition, is assisted killing. It can be voluntary, involuntary, it can be active and passive, it can be classified in various manners. But the fact remains that euthanasia deals with 3 core issues. One is chronic pain, to relieve chronic pain. 2 is to relieve chronic suffering. And 3 is what we call as, in terms of terminally ill patients which have irreversible damage and they cannot be revived, or brain dead patients.
Understood.
Pain and suffering can never be classified, it can never be quantified. Now we are talking of a particular patient which was a nurse who was raped and strangulated, and she was having hypoxic brain damage. But please understand, and I'll take 1 minute of your time, that there is a lot of patients we see clinically who have chronic pain right from birth. There are chromosomal disorders, there are structural abnormalities from birth, there are chronic patients with oncology and cancer diseases, there are road traffic accidents, and of course there is what we call as brain dead patients. Now, coming to the medical science, when you are focusing on pain or suffering, it can never be quantified. We cannot say this patient has to end the life because of certain medical conditions or not. Secondly is, when you talk in terms of brain dead or in the severe form of chronic vegetative state, please understand that in the last 10 years there have been tremendous amount of medical advances in which even people like Michael Schumacher, which was put in a hypothermic ventilatory state, has recovered after almost 6 months of perhaps no recovery in any other part of the world.
Yes.
Yeah, just 1 minute please. There are also patients who have begged for euthanasia or mercy killing, like a patient known as Sonali Mukherjee, who was a severe acid attack patient, and in fact she was treated by us and she has recovered. So instead of saying dignity while dying, I will rather focus on saying let's give them dignity while living. I don't think as medical professionals we can pull the plug on any patient, knowing fully well that whatever best treatment we can give till the patient breathes last, that's our duty, and that's what we will accomplish.
No, 1 second. Now I want a full response from Harish Salve on that. You see, we are a very selfish state, Mr. Salve. We don't take of our old and aging and our sick. And there has been a case, perhaps you're aware of it, of a 70-year-old retired school teacher from in Karnataka who stays in an old age home till 2003. She files a petition where she seeks physician-assisted death because she says, I cannot afford the cost of my medical treatment. Right? Now the court rejects the petition and directs NIMHANS to give free treatment to her for 4 weeks and submit a report. But with a change of the laws, unfortunately, there may be hundreds of thousands of people like this who will say that, you know, we are suffering, we are not taken care of, and we want to die. How many people will we then allow, Harish Salve, to go along that path?
Arnab, let's put them in three separate silos. Does the doctor have a right to pull the plug? Is a completely separate issue. From do the relatives have the right to pull the plug? Is a completely separate issue from saying if I am in a form of an illness which I know will head towards terminal illness, do I have the right to say if I reach a particular point, please do not prolong my agony? Do the doctors have a right to pull the plug on their own? Sanjeev's point is well taken. The Hippocrates Oath obliges them to keep people alive. The state can never be heard to say we don't have resources to keep people alive. So that's one completely separate issue. Do the relatives have a right to say, I cannot afford to pay? That's a question mark issue.
How?
If somebody is brain dead and the relatives are being asked to pay, they may not pay, which pushes you back to the first issue. Does the state have to keep him alive? My answer is yes. I am talking of a very small circle, the right to live with dignity. Today, if I am in a terminal illness and at a state when I am capable of taking rational decisions, I have not lost my faculty of thinking. I say, I know I'm heading down this road. If I reach a particular point, please help me exit rather than prolong my existence. Is that not a right?
Okay, just a small point to that. Harish Salve, it is no, one second. Harish Salve, I'm not, Harish Salve, Harish Salve, just a small interjection on that. As I said, sir, I underline, we are a very cruel country with our citizens.
Yes.
We have no health care. Sanjeev Bagai, you can come in, anyone can. We have no health care. We don't provide basic medical care. Now, everybody is not a Michael Schumacher, right? So Michael Schumacher was kept alive. We don't even let people live.
Yes.
I am saying today that self-assisted suicide, you know, what you call a person's decision to carry out passive euthanasia, or I will not take medicines, is not the issue. That I want to be led to my death. Where will you, panelists on the other side say you're opening a Pandora's box? Sanjeev Bagai wants to come back into that debate because...
See, this Pandora's box is an argument as a lawyer which we have heard. When we said if you go into judicial review, you'll open Pandora's box. If you allow Supreme Court to review contracts, you'll open Pandora's box.
Sir.
We've opened so many Pandoras and we've contained the Pandora. So that by itself is not an issue.
Sir, Sanjeev Bagai. Sanjeev Bagai is responding to you, Harish Salve.
My only argument is that limited resource of healthcare or a topsy-turvy economy in which some people can afford private healthcare and some people cannot even afford government healthcare for routine medicines does not define or cannot be a criteria to decide either by the relatives or by certain patients. Now, I'll open it to the 2 or 3 segments which you had eliminated earlier. And you cannot eliminate them because they are overlapping. One is medical issues. Now, it's just not a chronic vegetative state. You're looking at pain and suffering from neurodegeneration. You're looking at dementia. You're looking at chromosomal and genetic disorders. You're looking at metabolic disorders. It's a host. It's a very, very large segment of patients.
Anand Grover.
Where do we draw a line?
Anand,
the point number two whose will?
Point number two is when you're talking in terms of a chronic vegetative state, I agree that everyone is not a F1 formula driver who can be saved, but the fact is there are advances in medical science which we call as deep brain stimulation. They are being done in India too, and patients do recover. So it is very difficult on clinical grounds, medical grounds, or legal or social grounds to have a given set of criteria which in a large country like India which we can follow. And lastly and most importantly,
Sanjeev, the point is
what Harish has said with regards use and abuse. It's impossible. In India we cannot eliminate quacks. How are we going to keep use?
That's another good point.
In inverted commas.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
We have the right to pull the plug.
Yeah.
The point is, my will, if I am in a particular state, to say, if the doctors give me no hope, I would rather exit with dignity.
Sir, I know your argument.
Very different from saying if a doctor assesses me and says,
I take your point. You are coming from a very basic point, Mr. Salve, and Anand, I'm coming to you, that if a person has a right to life, why shouldn't the person have a right to die with dignity? Isn't it a person's choice as to the degree of suffering that he or she can withstand instead of helplessly waiting for his or her death? I'm coming to you on the religious point as well. Anand Grover is responding to Sanjeev Bagai. Anand Grover, yes, please.
Yeah, to Sandeep, I can say only one thing. I agree with him that there can be enormous misuse in this country. So you have to have level of layers of decision making which take into account all that you have said. Those things have to be taken into consideration. You should not only have the relatives pulling the plug, you cannot only have doctors pulling the plug.
Yes,
so you have to have a layered checks and balances. One minute. But if you decide that a person has a right to live with dignity and die with dignity, you have to fulfill that purpose. And therefore you have to have a number of layers for decision making. Now the other point is, I don't think there's any difficulty if a person has decided by a will or advanced instructions to say I want to die in a particular state, vegetative state, then that's not really a big problem according to me in law. But when there are no advanced instructions and relatives come into the picture and they want to bump him off or bump her off, then it's a very big problem. That's where we have to take the issue.
Okay, one second. Anand, I started with the religious argument. I need to close with it. Because
just one point.
Sanjeev, very briefly, please, because I need to go back. I need to go back to Abraham Mathai. Because my bigger point is that we need to decide this whole religious versus natural death argument. I needed to make a point on that.
I'm not keeping...
Yes, Sanjeev.
I'm not keeping the religious overtones into my argument. My point is very straight. Even countries like Australia and Ireland and even Canada actually withdrew euthanasia by law, which they had in vogue because of the abuse problem. There are just 4 very small and very close-knit societies in the EU, which include Luxembourg and Belgium and Switzerland and so on, which have limited use of euthanasia. There were 11 states in US who had euthanasia, and it's zeroed down only to Washington, Oregon and Montana. Even there it is restricted. So in limited population also they have enormous problems of controlling its abuse. In India it will be let loose, it will be wildfire.
I take your point, and in these societies they do take care of their people, there is social security, etc. But I want to close by asking this point to Dr. Abraham Mathai. Dr. Mathai, you know, please don't take it otherwise, but in the 21st century, in the India of 2014, morality and religion, even in the matter of dying, cannot be the sole guiding force for law. The interest of the people has to be, the constitution has to be. You can't bring religion as the guiding force for lawmaking in India of 2014, Abraham Mathai. There are some areas where religion cannot be allowed. Maybe this is one of them, Abraham Mathai.
Arnab, I'll tell you this. Passive euthanasia is a physician-assisted suicide, but it's a suicide. So if suicide is an offense, this also is an offense. And you are actually usurping God's authority over man's life. And as one of the participants said, that ours is a poor country, and the poor families, they will try to eliminate their relatives. It's definitely going to happen, and we are going to actually open a Pandora's box here in a country where even kidneys and vital organs get robbed by doctors. One can really imagine, if this is actually legalized, what we are going to face.
Well,
And I said earlier, there will be so many kind of advocacy groups. People who are lame, people who are mentally challenged, people who are blind. They all want to say that we want to die because we want to live with dignity. So the words he said, live with dignity, is it's a very debatable issue.
I understand.
And this should not be permitted.
I understand. The only argument is that when people are in an irreversible vegetative condition, when no meaningful life is possible, then it can be allowed. But however, this is a complex debate. I'm just happy we are presenting different points of view tonight. Taking into view different perspectives, not taking a position on this. The debate on dying with dignity, an important one, needs to be carried forward. I thank our participants for joining me on debate number 2 on the Newshour tonight.